Hello, writers and readers. I'm freelance fiction editor Miranda Darrow, here with my weekly video about writing, editing, and the writing life. It's time for a writing craft topic, and this week we're going to do some light copy editing to teach you how to correctly style and add punctuation to your dialogue passages so you can do it right the first time and not have to fix it all later. But first, a word about dialogue and character voice. There's plenty to say about dialogue. My favorite writing craft book on dialogue is James Scott Bell's How to Write Dazzling Dialogue, the fastest way to improve any manuscript. And also I like the Writer's Digest anthology, Crafting Dynamic Dialogue, the complete guide to speaking, conversing, arguing, and thinking in fiction. I have another video on this YouTube channel with my review of James Scott Bell's Dazzling Dialogue book. So if you're interested in seeing more about what's in that book, check out that video. And here are some tips for making your dialogue sing. First, give a different voice to each of your characters by reading their dialogue out loud or have your computer read it to you. Use select words that fit with each character's background. Trim unnecessary details like, hello, how's your mom? And long goodbyes. This is really tough for Midwesterns. You can't even get out of a place without a half an hour. But in dialogue, nobody wants to read that. Just ghost on out of that scene. Don't bury your dialogue in long paragraphs that start and end with narrative text. Make your dialogue stick out because readers' eyes gravitate for it. Word choice in dialogue is key for character voice. Consider the character's level of education, experience, and worldview. Does each character's voice sound distinct? Whose dialogue passages always take up a full paragraph, and which character rarely says anything more than yup and nope? Do you want to have a character who sees the world through a musical lens? One who would describe the short burst of gunfire as staccato and the rising drama as a crescendo? For example, think about how a typical lawyer talks and thinks and draws analogies. It's not the same way that a doctor or a landscaper or a young child or an alien visiting from a distant universe arriving on Earth for the first time would likely describe the world. How does each character talk and think? How do they compare things? What analogies and metaphors and similes? To enhance character voice, make your character cheat sheets for all your main characters that track their worldview, their frame of reference, their interests. If your beta readers and or critique partners think your characters are too similar or generic, make sure the characters' names aren't too similar, as that can confuse your readers too. List your characters alphabetically by first name and see if they start with the same first letter or sound alike. And make sure you don't have 3 characters named Chris, which I don't recommend unless you're writing Marvel Universe fanfic that breaks the fourth wall, in which case, carry on. If a character has a catchphrase, reserve the use of that catchphrase just for that character, unless it's a plot point that they're an influencer and their unique phrase is catching on among their friend group. Sometimes it's more interesting if fetch is just not going to happen, Gretchen. Identify clunky as you know Bob dialogue, where one character is telling another one something that they both already know. For example, we're here because the government decree made by my uncle, the king, who was responsible for the death of your son, Francis, who had been my betrothed. This sort of info dumping annoys readers because they know you're trying to tell the reader because these characters already know it. Having the dialogue be 100% realistic is not the goal. We want compelling. Cut out the clutter. Real-life conversations are, I'm sorry to say, dull. I'm a practicing attorney and I've edited books by and about attorneys. And almost always, it's better to select words to show authenticity, like subpoena or voir dire, words that readers would associate with attorneys, rather than subject poor readers to actual legal tests. Whereas the party of the first part, oof, fiction readers are looking for an escape, not a punishment. A mentor told me to let my dialogue shine on the page by either starting and or ending the paragraph with it. You can include dialogue tags, action beats, and even narrative text between dialogue on one end or on one end of the paragraph, but don't surround your whole dialogue with narrative text. Readers' eyes gravitate towards the dialogue passages, and your dialogue could get skipped if it's the lettuce or cheese in your narrative text sandwich. Okay. Now let's move on to styling and punctuation for dialogue passages. This is a bit of copy editing for your writing repertoire. It's not difficult, but it's also not intuitive. Learning to correctly punctuate dialogue is a line level type of edit, and knowing these rules will save you and or your copy editor or proofreader lots of work later. It's not difficult, and it's just something you got to learn. Here are a few quick rules and a few examples. If you are using a dialogue tag, which is a word like said or ask, that is considered to be part of the same sentence as the line of dialogue. As such, use commas to separate the dialogue from the tag, in that comma should be inside the quotation marks, and treat the dialogue tag as part of the sentence as a continuation of the sentence, which means there would be no capital letter for the first word of the dialogue tag unless it's a proper noun. If a segment of dialogue starts a sentence, The first letter should always be capitalized, even if it follows a dialogue tag and a comma. However, if you are using an action beat rather than a dialogue tag, this is considered a separate sentence. End your dialogue with a period and start the action beat sentence with a capital letter. Example, you pulled it off. An enthused farmer Klein said, "This could be our best sweet corn days ever." Next sentence, he motioned for Sally to join him on stage. Let's hear from the mayor. Next up, it wasn't just me, an overheated Sally pulled Hector to the podium with her. Next sentence, it was Hector's letter writing campaign, an overjoyed Sally said, that saved the day. Note, this is awful writing, telling rather than showing, but I added unnecessary adjectives to demonstrate the correct use of capital letters. I did this because I needed Farmer Klein and Sally to not be the first ones because those are all proper nouns. If your line of dialogue ends with an exclamation point or a question mark, the only style difference would be the capital letter or lack thereof. For the dialogue itself, if the quoted text is the start of a sentence, it starts with a capital letter. But if you want to interrupt that sentence with a dialogue tag, the continued dialogue can start mid-sentence, lowercase, unless it's a proper noun. Once you learn these rules, you can start to style dialogue correctly while drafting and save yourself a ton of time later. It will make your writing look more polished to agents and acquiring editors and to readers. Each shift of conversation and dialogue starts a new paragraph. Do not mix one character's dialogue into the same paragraph as another character's dialogue or another character's action beat. In my example, we use short paragraphs, changing every time somebody does something or says something, and you should do the same. You should avoid burying your dialogue in a long paragraph that starts and ends with narrative text because people will skip over that. Readers love dialogue and their eyes gravitate, so don't risk it being skipped over because it's being hidden by a wall of text. Let it dance out there with the glorious white space on your page. Here are some dialogue punctuation rules for American fiction authors, or if you're writing for an American audience. The rules are different for UK and other English writers. First, always put commas and periods inside the quotation marks, not outside of them. Second, use a double quotation mark for dialogue. If your speaker is quoting somebody else inside of that, indicate that with a single quotation mark inside of the double quotation marks when you're using dialogue, when they're quoting somebody inside of dialogue. Next, do not inject another character's action beat between bits of dialogue from a different character. Make a new paragraph if that other character just needs to react in the middle of someone else talking. Also, rude, so do that for impact if you want to show that they're interrupting. And speaking of which, use dashes and ellipses to cut sentences off. If you have a multi-paragraph section of dialogue with a single speaker, start each paragraph with a set of opening quotes, but don't use end quotes at the ends of each of those paragraphs in the middle of a long-winded speech. Use only one set of end quotes at the end of a multi-paragraph monologue. Also, consider trimming that multi-paragraph monologue. Hamlet, readers generally don't want to have characters lecturing them, and they also don't want to hear them lecturing other characters. There you have it, some quick tips to improve your dialogue passages so they look more polished. Tune into this YouTube channel next week when I will give my writing craft book review of Lisa Crone's Story Genius. It's a personal favorite. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. I post new content every week about writing, editing, and the writing life. This is Miranda Darrow wishing you happy writing.